Hello and welcome back to the Draw Pod. It's me, your host, Elyse. In this episode, I'll be chatting while doing a painting of my dog on a couch. If you're new here, this is a visual podcast where I draw something and chat with you as I go. You really don't have to watch the video to know what's going on, and if you prefer to listen to it on a podcast app, it's available everywhere. If you want to watch the YouTube video, check out my channel linked in the description of the podcast. And if you'd like to see the final image, check out my art Instagram, which is at Elyse_draws. So yes, I had such a fun time working on this painting of my sweet little pup. I love how it turned out. It was really nice to work in more of a restricted color palette of just using cool colors. That's absolutely what I feel most comfortable using. So yeah, it was really fun to do. But before we get into my usual art ramblings, I'm going to go through the weekly segments, which are a life update, artist of the week, and a book update. So as for my life, what's been going on? I've been trying to have a pretty productive week, just going on, getting back into things. I've been making a lot of art and I've been really enjoying it. I think this past week I've posted on Instagram pretty much every day, which is kind of crazy. And it's not just because I've planned it to be that way. It's mostly just because I've felt like it and I've had work to share. So that feels really good. Because a while ago, it just felt like I'd never had enough work to be sharing this frequently. So anyway, I just posted a reel of a palm tree that was being covered by some other crawling plant that I found on Google Earth whenever I was searching. And yeah, I think it's a fun little reel. You should check it out. But yeah, I've just been trying to post more on there. I've been trying to work more on job applications and kind of get more into it and feel better about it. And I am putting in my best effort. Making art, making YouTube. YouTube's been weird. I mean, not super weird. I've just all of the videos I have planned, I need a kind of period of time to work on them and to make art for those videos and make things for those videos. And so it's not something that I can just sit down and record. My top 5 tips for starting a journal in 2015. Nothing easy like that. But I'm working currently on this Animal Crossing related video just of me doing art based off of 2 little areas of the game that are going to be really fun to make and share. I'm already enjoying it quite a lot. And yeah, as for speaking of job applications and stuff, one good thing that is me headed in the right direction. I had a mentorship call through one of the organizations that I'm a part of. It's just kind of a professional organization in Austin, and I'm really excited to be a part of it, and I've gotten a lot out of it from some of their other programming and things. But for this, they give you the opportunity to be mentored by someone for a short or a long period of time. Anyway, I was finally paired up with a mentor and I had a call with her and it went really well. It makes me feel better to kind of have someone to hold me accountable to at least apply to stuff and to advance my career and have someone cheering for me and someone who's not in my family or isn't a friend or my boyfriend that I can reach out to if I need anything. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. And yeah, I'm just trying to look for stuff that interests me and apply to that. And I guess once I apply, just kind of detach myself from it. So I'm not feeling as let down about it if I don't get it or if I don't even hear back, which is honestly maybe worse. It's definitely worse. So yeah, and as I always say, it's not super fun, but you got to do it. And job applications are the one thing where you can put in so much effort and all the effort in the world, but it's the one thing where you're not guaranteed proportional results for the effort that you put in, if that makes sense. And that just does not make much sense in my brain. So anyway, I'm still applying to jobs and doing my best and hoping to find some really fun creative things within social media. So yeah. Other than that, the other exciting good thing that has been happening this week is that I've really been consistent with waking up and reading right away. I just have made it a habit at this point. I mean, I'm still building the habit. It's definitely not set in stone. I still do want to reach for my phone first thing, but I just have my Kindle on top of it. So I have to grab my Kindle and read for at least 10 minutes. I try to like read until 7 because I wake up anytime between like 6 and 6:30. So I'm at least getting like 10, 15 minutes. Sometimes I get 30 minutes of reading. So that's been a really good habit. I feel like I've been starting my day off on a better note. But my screen time is still absolutely way too high. So I need to work on that. Yeah. So that's what's been going on in my life. Nothing new, just kind of the usual, and trying to stay positive about everything and just keep creating lots of stuff. As for my artist of the week, this week I would like to highlight Joshua Barkman, and you've probably never heard his name before, but you've probably definitely seen his comics, which is they're posted under the account at False Knees, like a knee, like you're bending your knee, on Instagram. And it's these bird comics. I'm sure, like I said, everyone has probably seen them, but in case you haven't, you should check them out. They're so funny. I have his book that he published maybe like a year ago that I still need to sit down and like read. I mean, it's definitely like just like a book full of his comics, which are just like 4-panel comics most of the time. And they just truly spark so much joy in me. I love funny birds, and I love his style of illustration and cartooning and drawing. And kind of how it can be very realistic at times, but like the realism plays into the humor of the comic. Anyway, check out his account. I will link it in the description of this, but that is an artist who inspires me, who makes me laugh and makes me smile, and who I wish that I hope to be able to instill some of like what he gives to me to other people through my art. And as for a book update, I am still reading. I think I said the 2 books I was reading last week were Range and Maybe You Should Talk to Someone. Here's let me get on my soapbox or whatever. So Range is about generalists and how it's a really amazing thing to not just like niche down and do one thing, but to do a bunch of things. Like basically the book starts out talking about like Tiger Woods and how he picked up a golf club when he was like, I don't know, probably 6 months old. Not really. Don't quote me on that. But he picked up a golf club really early, and he was playing golf, and he was really good at it, and that was all he cared about and all he did as a child and into an adult, and he's really good at it. But then you have this other famous tennis player who I did not remember his name, but he's a very famous tennis player, and he as a child, played a lot of different sports and, ended up being pretty good at tennis, but it wasn't always his priority. And then he got older and he was really good, and they wanted to put him in like a higher age division because he was like really good for his age. But then he asked to be brought back down because he just wanted to play with his friends. It was just casual about it and just loved the sport, loved to play sports, and loved just kind of the diverse activities he was doing. And then he's one of the best tennis players now. He just moved into like just playing tennis professionally, and it was that really strong base of learning and playing other sports along with tennis that got him to where he is. So I really liked that, and it just goes into more about how like it's not always good to put your kid into one sport as a kid, or like one instrument like piano, and force them to play that as they're growing up, because you think they're going to be behind if they don't start early on something like violin or piano or golf or anything. And that's not a good thing, because it's nice to try a lot of different things. And it's just overall, I have to get to my beef with it. But overall, I really like the idea of the book. I've gotten a lot out of it. However, it is just like and it has such high ratings on Goodreads, but it is just one of those books, the nonfiction books, that just like goes on forever, and there are way too many examples. And I have been reading this book for so long, and I'm only at like 25% right now. And the other book I'm reading along with it at the same time, I'm at 50%. And I would say I've read them both like an equal amount of time. It is ridiculous. There's too many examples, and it's like, I get it. I understand. You don't need to give me 5 more examples of musicians who tried a lot of other things before they settled on like what they're really known for. So that's my struggle, because I really want to like absolutely adore and love this book. And it's just been so hard for me to get through. And I read nonfiction, and sometimes I feel this way with nonfiction, with Malcolm Gladwell. He is a wonderful author, and and sometimes I get bored with all of his examples, but he really fleshes out like one or two examples in each of his chapters, and then he kind of gives you some little tidbits for things you can research on your own if you would like to continue to dive into it. But this, oh my gosh, this just gave me all of his examples. And like, I respect that this is a very well-researched thing. It just doesn't really need to be. This book can be half as long. Anyway, that's my rant about range. I'm still going to finish it because I'm stubborn and I hate putting books down. I've only recently only ever put down like one book just because I couldn't get through it. And so I refused to not get through this book. Anyway, the other book that is wonderful that I am reading that doesn't put me to sleep at night is Maybe You Should Talk to Someone, which is about a therapist and her therapist. And it is very good, and I'm really liking it a lot. It is also very highly rated on Goodreads, but this I can definitely understand why. You should check it out. I've just learned a lot about therapy throughout this process, and it's interesting because it's kind of technically nonfiction, because she is kind of like, it's like more of like a memoir, like her talking about her experiences, but it kind of reads more like a fiction book. And also so much of the information is changed from what the actual like story is because of privacy concerns with being a therapist and like mentioning your clients and like their issues and things like that. So anyway, those are what I'm reading. They actually are pretty complementary, which has been interesting to like read these books and see similarities between the two of them in terms of just like subject matter. And that's something I would like to explore more is like, and also please comment if you do have this. Do you have any books that are like excellent pairings with each other? Like, have you ever read two books at the same time and like they just fed into each other or something, or fed off of each other? Like, I don't know. It's like a wine and cheese pairing or something like that. If you have any, please let me know. But I'd love to see if that exists on the internet, that like people are talking about what are like two good books to read together, because I like reading more than one book at a time. So anyway, that was my incredibly long rant about books this week. But I've been reading a lot, and it's been nice to just spend extra time kind of relaxing, because this is kind of like, reading is kind of my meditation that I found that I really enjoy. So now getting into my art ramblings and things. Gouache rocks. This painting that you're watching me do, it was so fun to do. And yeah, I mean, I basically was sitting on the floor of my front room whenever we actually had a snow day in Austin, which was so much fun. It was so great. I'm still seeing little bits of snow still here, and that snow day happened like maybe 5 days ago at this point. Mostly it's because like kids like put snowmen together and like have these snowballs, and so there's just little remains of them left. But I'm surprised they've lasted this long. Anyway, it was a winter wonderland. It was wonderful. I was enjoying my time inside also, and sitting on the floor of my front room while my dog was in her usual perch. She's actually outside my door right now, but I can't let her in because I don't want to get up, but I'll let her in later. Anyway, she's on her perch on the couch. She loves to rest her head on things. That's just like, ever since she was a puppy, she likes to rest her head on pillows. She uses pillows like real people do. On couch ledges, on like chairs. It's very cute. On your lap. It's very sweet. So I wanted to draw her, and surprisingly enough, she sat still enough for me to actually do a drawing of her. Took some pictures, and then as you can see, if you're looking on screen, if you're watching the video, you can see that I have a black and white image that I kind of edited a little bit of my dog, just to kind of see the values more. I watched a video on YouTube just about watercolor painting, and this isn't watercolor, but it's still valuable information just about planning out your values in your painting to make sure they're accurate. And I really liked that. And so I wanted to try that for this. And this was sort of my experiment into that. And I think it worked out really well. But using this gouache was really neat. This is the just Turner Design gouache. I don't really know any other brands. If you know any, please let me know in the comments. But I used to use their acrylic gouache, as you probably know if you're a listener to the podcast, and it's very difficult to work with because it's basically just acrylic paint that looks like gouache. And who really enjoys acrylic paint? Okay, there's probably a lot of people, but I'm more of a watercolor gouache kind of gal. So this was really fun to do. I feel like I've said that 50 times, but it was nice to be able to kind of blend things a little bit more, if that makes sense. Like, because you can re-wet it, but it's definitely very different than watercolor. And I like it. I need to spend more time with it, but this turned out really well. And as I mentioned earlier, I think it was because I used a limited color palette. And that is something I kind of wanted to start doing on this podcast, is to kind of evaluate my art and take time to point out what was good about it, or like why it was successful or why it wasn't successful. So I would say this is a successful painting. Part of the reason was that I did use a limited color palette, especially on a part of the spectrum that I am very comfortable with and I love. My favorite 3 colors are blue, purple, and pink. So as you can tell, I was having a great time with this. And they just make sense to me. I did another painting recently for like the Still Here, Still Life thing that I do. And that was definitely using more of the warmer side of the spectrum, although it was more like complementary, like a lot of yellows and reds and then purple. So it was fun to do. It was a really good practice, but oh my gosh, it was just challenging for me. So this is a part of the spectrum I'm comfortable with. I think I do well with limited palettes, so I need to start doing that more. I also think that it turned out well in part because I drew from life. Just something about it, about doing that, always makes a painting or a drawing more successful for me. And it's something that I can't really tell until I'm finished with it. And then I'm like, dang, that looks good. Like there's a significant difference from whenever I'm just painting from a picture. So that's something to think about and to incorporate into more of my future work. But it's just interesting how a drawing, the drawing underneath everything can change how the final painting ends up looking. And then the last thing I wanted to say about like why I think this was successful was that I feel I kind of noticed that I need to have like a good sense of nervousness and confidence in making my art lately. Whenever I make something that I'm actually proud of and happy with, it's been a while since I have felt those things about my art, until like doing this, which I'm very happy about. I kind of need to feel both of those things when I make something I like. So kind of being nervous about something or being like, oh, this is looking good, but I could push this a little further, and then kind of gaining the confidence to push it further and make it happen and make it look good. And then it looks good, you know? And sometimes it won't look good, but those are just 2 feelings that I've identified while I'm painting that seem to be really important to the process. So yes, we are identifying our clues and figuring out how to be great painters. So yeah. I'm also, I mentioned I'm working on an Animal Crossing video right now. I'm also working on a gouache video. I have done a few studio vlogs, so I need to actually get back to doing other types of videos, although I'll probably keep doing maybe 2 studio vlogs a month. I think that's manageable for me. They're really easy for me to film, and I enjoy editing them. But I'm working on a gouache video where I kind of just reflect on a lot of these gouache paintings, so you'll probably see me talk about this painting again in that video. And I'm trying to do like 5 to 7 gouache paintings and just kind of talk about how the experience was for me just in my process of figuring out gouache. But yeah, also watercolor still rocks too. Don't you ever forget it. I recently started doing a mixing chart, which I started with my Turner acrylic gouache earlier, and I never finished it because that was a major pain in the butt to mix all of those colors and then they dry up. Oh my gosh. That wasn't fun, but watercolor is definitely easier to work with and do these kind of things with and pull out a bunch of different colors and mix them, and you feel like you're wasting them in some ways, but I feel a good sense of like comfort from doing them, in part because I'm like, oh, it opens up my mind a little bit, and I'm like, I have so many colors that I can use just from this palette that I haven't even noticed, because I have this one Daniel Smith watercolor palette that has a lot of more basic colors. It's a good starter pack, and I've never really explored it. I just use this other one, and I forget the name of the artist who like collaborated with the brand to make this, but like it's a lot more earthy colors. If you look at any of my art on my Instagram, it's kind of generally in that color palette. It's a lot of like blues, greens, purples, more earthy yellows and oranges, and not really red at all. That's my main palette. So I really liked that set, but I want to get to know these other watercolors more just in my forever journey of understanding color, and I'm getting there. That's what feels good, is I feel like I'm actually making progress and starting to understand things. So look at this growth. You need to identify growth and like point out when you're growing so you remember that you grew. Anyway, so maybe if you are just kind of in an art block, or if you're feeling anxious about anything, or if you are feeling like you need to know how to use color more, like me, maybe, make this like mixing chart where you basically just kind of draw some squares and then mix colors and fill them in. It's really fun to do, not even just as like a creative exercise to practice your skills with like understanding color. So anyway, that opened up my mind a lot, and I really enjoyed doing it. So I think that takes us to the end of the podcast for this week. Thanks so much for listening and watching and enjoying this. I hope you really liked it. A reminder to give this a thumbs up on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube, or rate this 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you. I appreciate your ears. And make sure to check out this painting on my art Instagram, which is, again, at Elyse_draws. Everything I mentioned today is linked in the description of the podcast, so definitely check it out. Okay, thanks so much again for watching and listening, and I will see you next week for the next episode of the Draw Pod. Bye.